Lincoln County, living, we're roaming free. Every town a treasure, every moment a spree. From the valleys to the mountains where the wild things be. Lincoln County's heart is calling you and me.
Welcome to Lincoln County Living, the podcast for the people by the people. I'm Coyote, here to introduce today's episode and set the stage for your host, Nicholas Hall, your trusted guide and storyteller in all things Lincoln County. Nicholas is excited to share the podcast's brand new theme song, which perfectly sets the tone for what's to come. Don't forget, you can listen to Lincoln County Living on your favorite platforms, including Spotify, Apple Podcasts, YouTube, iHeartRadio, Amazon Music, and more. Be sure to follow the podcast on Facebook and your favorite listening platform to stay connected. In today's episode, Nicholas sits down with Preston Marshall from No Dogs Left Behind, a local business that's making a difference. They'll dive into Preston's story, the incredible services he provides, and the positive impact his work has on Lincoln County. Before we get started, a quick heads up. Today's audio might sound a little different. Preston joined Nicholas at his home, and they recorded on the same computer, a first for the podcast. While it's not perfect, Nicholas is always working to improve your listening experience. Thanks for tuning in to Lincoln County Living. Now, here's your host, Nicholas Hall, with today's special guest, Preston Marshall from No Dogs Left Behind.
Here with Preston Marshall today with No Dogs Left Behind. We're going to talk about their background and their story and what started the whole thing with his dog training and everything in that nature. How are you doing today, Preston?
I'm well, thank you, sir. Happy to be here.
Yeah, we're happy to have you on. It's going to be a great episode. Let's go ahead and talk about you first.
Okay.
Can you start by sharing a bit about yourself? Like, are you originally from Lincoln County? Did you move here?
Well, I tell everybody I'm from Lincoln County because I'm from Albuquerque, and that never really starts off a conversation well. But I moved over here originally when I was about 21.
Okay.
Stayed here for 4 or 5 years, and then I moved out to Albuquerque again, came back. Then I moved to Roswell, and then I came back here. The last time I came here, everything just kind of fell in my lap. I was working for PepsiCo at the time. I was a delivery driver, and I hurt my back. I had 6 bulging discs, nerve damage in my right leg, which I still deal with today, and my career was kind of up in the air for what I was going to do next. Things just kept keeping me back in Ruidoso, and I actually made contact with Lois Whitmire through a friend of mine at the time, and Lois interviewed me to be a dog trainer because she wanted to pass on her wisdom and pass on her knowledge, and she really liked me, and she coached me up, and I just kind of took it from there. It all fell in my lap as far as my professionalism in dog training went. But I tell everybody that I'm from Lincoln County because this is my home.
It's a cool place to call home too.
Yeah.
And I could see why people would start going, oh, he's from Albuquerque. We have no hate for people in Albuquerque, but some people do. We'll just say that.
Well, the state of Albuquerque these days, it can kind of be like, oh, who's this guy?
That's very true. How did No Dogs Left Behind start?
So No Dogs Left Behind started because of Lois Whitmire. You know, she took a chance on me to train me up and to hand me her business and just pass on the keys to the industry in this area. And I chose the name No Dogs Left Behind. It just really resonated with me. I was sitting there thinking about names, and it just popped up in my head, and it hasn't gone away since, because part of my training philosophy is that every single dog can be trained. And
right.
It's us to give up on dogs. And when we leave our dogs behind, we failed them.
It's very true. And I know we had called Lois about training, and she's actually the one that referred us to you.
Okay.
So I guess in the scheme of things, she's the one that introduced us to you, and everything's been history since. Was there a specific moment or, experience that made you decide that working with dogs was your passion?
So I think about that a lot. And I remember being 4 years old, and I was training a border collie in my backyard, how to roll over, how to sit, and how to play cards with me. It was just something I was doing because it was fun. And I had my cousin's collie doing all sorts of tricks and stuff. And I've been working with dogs for my whole life. I trained my friends' dogs. I've trained ex's dogs. I've trained everybody who would let me train a dog. I had been training dogs pretty much my whole life on and off. I studied a lot of Cesar Millan when I was in high school, middle school area. And then
the dog whisperer.
Yeah, the dog whisperer.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. And then I just kind of stopped hanging out with dogs for a little while. And then I got my own dog, and he was a very difficult dog. He's a Husky German Shepherd mix.
Oh boy, that's a hyper energy right
Yeah. He used to use my apartment as a racetrack. There was nothing you could do to stop him. And I learned a lot. I learned a lot through the challenges of having this dog about what it's like to experience a dog and you have no idea how to handle it.
Right.
And the years went on, and I ended up getting another dog. His name is Heath, and he's the most precious German Shepherd ever. Easy, like requires no training at all. And then I became a dog trainer, and then I realized how crappy of a dog owner I was. Once I got the professional background and I started really assessing the psychology of a dog, I realized how much better of an owner I could be and how all my failures and how I can do better in the future.
And what do you find most rewarding about training dogs?
The people. It's easy to train dogs, but the connection when somebody gets a dog trained and they get to take their dog home and then they're happy to keep their dog. But there's a lot of situations where people are at their wits' end with their dog, and the last thing they're thinking is, I need to take this dog back, or I need to find a new home for it. And then they come to me, and sometime later, depending on the dog, they get to keep their dog and they go home and they're smiling. That's without a doubt, the best part of this.
So it's rewarding to reward the people, I
Yeah.
guess is what you're trying to say, right?
Absolutely.
And I know, I think it's just human nature a lot of the times to kind of be at your wits' end with the dog if they're being too difficult. And I know we kind of got to a point with a couple dogs that we took to Preston. It was just like we wanted to pull our hair out with those dogs. And then it was after going through Preston's classes, it definitely makes a huge difference. Like I tell them all the time, it's turning wild animals into pets.
What was the biggest difference that you got from my classes?
The biggest difference I got from Preston's classes was impulse control. That's always the biggest one.
For you or the dog?
A little of both, I guess. No, mostly the dog. I know a lot of times, dogs don't think before they do. It's just not in their nature. And I know after Preston's class, it seems like they learn to think before they do.
Well, they've learned to follow your direction.
Exactly.
And
exactly.
Us as humans, we focus on when our dog is doing something naughty, we just want them to stop doing that.
Exactly. And
What should they do?
Why don't they speak English at that point? Why don't they speak the human language is what we start thinking,
So we have to communicate to our dog the correct set of parameters or the correct discipline that I want for my dog to do. And once they understand that what their job is to do X, Y, Z, they just do it.
Yeah.
They want to do that because it makes us happy. They're a lot different than cats in that regard. My cat wants to do things for me because it wants me to make it.
It wants things from you rather than you wanting things from it. When did No Dogs Left Behind start? What year? How long have you guys been around?
Gosh, what was it? 2022 is when I started training with Lois.
Okay. So it's been a few years.
Yeah, it's been a few years. I spent pretty much a year training with Lois that whole summer and that winter. I didn't start taking my own clients until like my own one-on-one clients without like assistance or anything like that until that winter of that year. And then things picked up pretty rapidly the following year. So what is this, 25? So yeah. I think it was, sounds about like the end of 22.
We're looking at about like going on three years or so.
Yeah, this would be my third year doing everything.
Very cool. Very cool. And he also just got a board and train facility, right?
I did. Yeah, I'm super blessed to have that. Now I have access to be able to take any dog I need to and sometimes get them away from owners so I can really get into the what's underneath the hood of that dog's brain.
And he can do it anytime. That's also a joy of it too. You can do it any time of day.
Yes.
Your bio on Facebook mentions working with reactive dogs and those with complex behavioral issues. What draws you to those particular challenges?
It's easy to get a good dog to sit. It's easy to take a dog who wants to do all the tricks and wants to do all those things. And honestly, sometimes it can be a little bit boring because once you've done it 1,000 times, it's just, it's awesome, but it's also, there's something else to be done there. It's not as fulfilling. But when you take a dog who is possibly going to be put down because it attacked its litter mate and now it didn't kill the litter mate, but it has puncture marks and we can still save the dog. Now we have a race against the clock to save this dog's life. And the problem with that is owners have to be on the same page. And sometimes we don't follow through with the training regimens and, it gets elongated or something happens, life happens. But other times we have really good success stories where a dog is able to do a complete 180 and now they have a brand new life and a brand new lease on life.
Very awesome. Very awesome. So to sum it all up, you just like the challenge of it all, really.
The challenge is great.
The reward.
The reward is good too. And I can't save every dog, but the dogs I do save, it's something very beautiful. So my philosophy comes down to just the name No Dogs Left Behind. I don't give up on dogs. It doesn't really matter what the dog has done. If it can be saved, I'm going to do my best to save it. And that goes for shelter dogs as well. I donate a lot of my time to the shelter because these dogs need help. We got Toby adopted, and Toby was a dog left.
Toby got adopted. Yay. That's a big one.
Yeah. Toby was a good dog. He was left after the fires, just at the shelter, and his mom got adopted, but he didn't. So he grew up in the shelter right after the fires. That dog was a proverbial mess, but we got him to the point where he could at least socialize around people. And it took 6 weeks to get him to just stand next to a stranger without peeing on himself.
Oh, goodness.
So after he got there, though, he got adopted, and now he's living with his family in California. Somebody saw my videos on TikTok or Facebook and came all the way down from California to pick him up.
Wow, that's a big impact.
It is.
Yeah, that's a big impact to have somebody travel to come adopt a dog.
Yeah, that's
crazy. Big news.
Blew my mind when I heard.
Yeah, that's big news. And we had talked about Toby in the episode I did with the Humane Society, and he was one of the long stay dogs, or the ones that were almost at the end. I mean, I'm just going to be honest. And it's great to hear that he got adopted, but that's incredible news that your TikTok got that far out that somebody came about it.
I'm not sure if it was my Facebook or my TikTok. I just heard that they saw one of my videos. Squirrel, who I think you met.
Yeah.
Squirrel is in a temporary, possibly adopting situation right now. She got picked up by some folks that are kind of testing her out in the home, seeing if they work with her. Because they saw the videos as well. And that's just due to everybody in town sharing them and helping grow my page. The impact the Humane Society has to the cohesive relationship. We want to get these dogs adopted, and we want to give them that chance. If I were to just leave those dogs behind, it wouldn't be me. Squirrel was also a long stay dog. She was
one of the ones we talked about too. Yeah. And she's a very great dog.
Excellent.
Yeah.
If I didn't have 5 dogs at home, I probably would have taken her.
Yeah. And she's one of those dogs that she would be loyal to you for her whole life.
Absolutely.
Yeah. She's got that mentality, you could tell. Just from a few weeks ago, I just talked to the Humane Society, and we were talking about these long stay animals, and to hear that 2 of them are adopted already because of you, that's awesome. That's really awesome news.
Well, I'd like to take all the credit, but it's also...
It's a lot of the Humane Society too, yeah.
It's a lot of the Humane Society helping out because they've supported me like no one else here has. They want these dogs adopted, and they want to see me successful.
And they just want to take care of people and the animals, so that's great. Can you explain some of the common causes of reactivity or phobias in dogs, and how do you address them?
So phobias are interesting because you have to know the history of the dog to understand their phobia. One of the biggest phobias we have is like loud noises. That can just be something as a puppy. They grew up with that fear. There's nothing that can come out right and cause it. I've seen dogs who have extreme phobias who've never been abused. They've grown up in a family where they eat raw meat their entire life, and they just develop into a phobia. Most of the time, though, all of these solutions come down to impulse control and restructuring the household. What I found is that all dogs require discipline. Now, there's a kind of a weird aura when you say the word discipline, because we think like military, my dog has to be structured and has to be upright. They can't get on the couch. They have to rules. That's not necessarily it. Discipline is just you and your dog's relationship on what you expect from your dog. And it comes first. So discipline, then exercise. Exercise is mental exercise just as much as physical. It doesn't matter if you have 100 acres for your dog to run. If they come inside and their brain is bored, they're going to chew on your couch, because chewing is I'm bored behavior. And how we get dogs not to be bored? Through training, through mental game exercises, teaching your dog something new, or just having that relationship with them. And then we give them food, because if we give them food before they've done the discipline and the exercise, that behavior of why should I do what you ask me to do starts to come out. Like, well, my dog will only sit if I have a treat.
Right.
That's because there's no discipline and there's no structure. There's no rules over your household, and your dog just kind of has the option to tell you no whenever they want. So why shouldn't they tell you no? And the last thing we give our dog is love, not because we shouldn't be loving our dog, but just because they start to think that they're in charge. And dogs who think that they're in charge, I'm looking at the German Shepherds, I'm looking at the Dobermans, I'm looking at those really hyper dogs who have in their DNA is to guard something. And when those dogs feel like they're in charge, it kind of makes them a little bit neurotic, and it makes them look around everywhere like there's a threat, or like they have to bark at the wind because there's something going on there. That's a dog who doesn't have discipline. I've observed even military dogs. These dogs have a leader. They're the most highest level trained dogs on the planet, but they have a handler, and they have a leader, and they have somebody who tells them what to do.
Yes.
So all of our dogs, even household dogs, crave that. And once they have that discipline, they just kind of think, okay, I didn't want to be in charge anyway.
Yes, and that makes a lot of sense. I mean, It sounds to me like, dogs are a lot like kids in a way.
I've heard that.
Yeah, dogs are a lot like kids. It's not really like in a mean way putting a dog in its place, but you're basically giving it the structure to know that it's the dog and you're the owner, is what I'm saying, right?
And dogs crave that. They don't want to be in charge. They really don't. I've never seen a dog who does everything they're supposed to do and acts accordingly when they're in charge of the household. There's always an issue that the owner has. There's always something that they wish that their dog wasn't doing.
What advice would you give to someone considering training for their dog but feeling hesitant?
Well, I guess it depends on the type of training. If you have a dog who isn't aggressive reactive or isn't fearful reactive where you can't function or the dog can't function in society, then you have a pretty easy dog to train. And if you're feeling hesitant about it, I would say build the relationship between you and your dog stronger. Work on relationship foundations. If you have a strong relationship between you and your dog, everything else is easy. And body language is super important here. You mentioned earlier, like our dogs don't speak English, but they do know body language.
Right.
And if we communicate to them through consistent and precise body language, they're going to get better at understanding what we want from them without us having to fight them so hard.
Now we're going to start talking about training techniques
Okay.
and your success stories. So if you can think of anybody,
Yeah.
any particular dog or anything like that.
So when I think about some of my success stories with reactive dogs, there's a couple dogs. The first one I always like to reference, his name is Max. When this dog came to me, he's a Doberman. He was about 2.5 years old now, or he was about 2.5 years old. He was so reactive. If he saw a dog on TV, he'd bark. He was so reactive. If he saw a dog 100 yards away, he'd pull his owner down, and so he could go get to that dog. So Max's owner is a little bit elderly and doesn't have the physical strength to handle him. And we're talking about just a classic scared of that Doberman kind of mentality starting to grow even in the owner now.
Right.
I took this dog after 7 months of training 3 times a week. And sometimes it does take that long. If anybody's going, holy crap at that number, sometimes it does take that long.
Or even longer, I'm sure.
Or even longer. But after 7 months of training with me, he won a blue ribbon at an AKC rally competition, which is first place.
That's a huge success story.
It's a massive success story.
Yeah.
Because I took a dog who was so reactive from barking at a dog on TV to being able to be in a full room with dogs he's never seen and people
and other people and crazy loud sounds, and I'm sure it's chaos.
New town he's never been to, walked up there and he won a blue ribbon his first try.
Wow. And I think I had talked to Max's owner. She was in one of our classes. She talked about how she takes him to restaurants and he just lays under the table and
Yeah, she can have a normal life with this dog now.
like an even more normal life. Like I don't know most people that would take their dog to just be that chill, especially Dobermans.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Dobermans are great. They're one of the smartest breeds and they're super easy to train. You just have to edge more towards the rules than you could with like a Pyrenees or something.
They're very smart.
Yeah.
They're very smart. And I know Zoe's a Doberman and sometimes she could be a knucklehead, I'll be honest. And it's like, okay. And then sometimes she's smarter than I am and it makes me upset. Yeah.
That's the challenge of having a breed like that, though.
Yeah.
Is you have to find new and inventive ways to keep your dog's attention.
Yep.
And that can be the struggle.
And I've noticed with Dobermans more than most breeds, they just want to please more than anything.
Yeah.
Like big time. They're big time people.
They come from police lines over in the UK.
Yeah.
They've been bred into serving humans and listening to humans.
So you talked about how training isn't just for the dog.
Correct.
For the owner too. How do you coach owners to reinforce training and build a stronger bond with their pets, even if they don't want to?
Well, so I love that question because I'm still trying to figure out the answer.
It's a pretty bold question, I know. I'll kind of emphasize a little bit. I know a lot of times, people are going to do what they want at the end of the day. But not only is it for you to find the best interest in the people, it's also for you to try to find the best interest for the animal.
Right.
Right.
And I think the balance between that is if you just have somebody who wants to walk their dog and they have this amazing dog, think of like an Australian Shepherd who could do backflips if you trained it to, and they don't care about that and all they want is something, then I have to tailor my approach to that person and I have to make sure that they're happy. And I think it comes down to communication because I have to really get into the details of what this individual is wanting from their dog. And I have to get that super early on. That way I can make sure I respect their time and we go the correct direction. The only times I have any difficulties is when there could be like a lack of understanding about what the end really looks like. If we have a project dog, then sometimes we have a household of dogs that needs adjustment. And that's where it can get into the nitty gritty of how complicated dog training can be. For instance, I have a client who has 3 different dogs that are all giving them problems. And each one of these dogs is a classic reactive phobia One's a classic reactive or reactive aggressive, and the other one's fearful aggressive.
So they all have their own.
They all have completely different things. And it's like, I can't tell you how to train this dog and you can apply it to dog B. It just doesn't work like that. So we have to take a tailored approach between each dog, and understanding, communicating properly to the individual what their dog's needs are is so crucial. And it really comes down to me bettering myself and how I interact with people to get the message across, because I might know something. I might have the answer in my head, but now I have to lead this person to the answer in a way that works for them.
So really it just depends on the person and the complexity of the situation.
It does. And it depends on me bettering myself with each encounter and making sure that I don't let my dog training ego kind of take over, because every dog trainer, I don't care who it is, thinks that they know everything at some point in their life.
Right.
And they have that ego come out. If you go to an AKC competition, there's ego everywhere. Any professional dog training competition, there's ego everywhere. So I have to constantly separate that ego, and I have to really work in being present for the dog and being present for the people.
That's really understandable. I know, it's probably hard for you to not let your personal feelings get in the way too.
Sometimes depending on the dog, like if there's been a couple times where I look at the situation of how a dog ended up, some dogs that have been put down that never needed to be put down. And it came down to the owners just literally not doing the curriculum and not caring about the dog. And they just rather would have put down the dog and restarted with a new dog because they got a dog in 3 weeks and it was a puppy. Things like that happen.
Yeah. And
that's hard.
It's definitely, I can imagine it's hard, because even just hearing that, it makes me kind of like uneasy.
Lois told me really early on stuff like that happens, and I didn't believe it until I saw it. And you can lead a horse to water, but you can't make it drink. And I've gotten a lot better at it, because things like that do happen. But it's the stories where I can turn a dog around and the people are very grateful. And, I have a dog who can travel with their owners.
That's a big deal.
Yeah, it is. And I had a couple this year call me right before the fires. So it was right before the fires, and then I ended up working with them right after the fires. They couldn't take their dog outside. They are travelers. They live in Winnebago, and they travel the whole country, but they couldn't travel with their dog because their dog was so reactive. And within 2 months, they had their dog to the point where they understood. They did their homework. They changed their entire lives to make this relationship better for their dog. And now they have a dog who's traveling to wherever they need him. And that's awesome. And I love that part of this job.
And when you say reactive behavior, that's like chewing on stuff.
Oh, no, like barking, lunging, seeing a person and trying to go through the window, just anything that you don't want your dog to do. Typically, reactive is seen as when they see aggression or a dog, it's lunging, barking, snapping, pulling the owner down, things like that.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's not good behavior at all for it.
It is not. And it's dangerous.
Yeah.
Your liability is huge when you have a dog like that.
Yeah. Because you may not want to have it put down, but if it attacks somebody, then
if it's perceived to attack somebody.
Perceived. There you go. Can you walk us through your approach for dogs with extreme reactivity and phobias?
Yeah, we have to slow everything down, and we have to take away the dog's freedoms. So the first thing I do when I walk into a house and I say, wow, this dog is super aggressive and we haven't had a bite yet, and this dog hasn't drawn blood or broken skin yet on a dog or a person. We have a time frame. Now, the first thing I tell everybody is dog behavior is compounding. Compounding behaviors mean as they do something, they get better at it. So as they lunge at another dog, they're going to get better at it. They're going to get more confident at it. As they snap, the first bite on somebody may not draw skin. It may just be leaving some red marks. The second bite, well, now they've got comfortable, could leave a bite mark. Same thing happens for people. People get better the more they do something. Now, we have to stop the dog from making decisions. The dog no longer has freedom. I have to put it in a kennel because I need it to be contained when we're not working with it. And then we restart the bonding process. So we go to 100% hand feeding, which means now there's going to be an exchange of behavior. I give you one piece of kibble for one behavior. Behavior is just a sit. A behavior is just a come. Now I'm really reinforcing that discipline. What I'm doing is I'm restructuring the way the dog's brain works. Typically in dog psychology, when I take my bowl of food and I put it down and I walk away, the relationship is not between me and my dog. It's between the bowl and the dog. That's where some dogs get food aggressive. They guard their bowl. Well, if I take away the bowl, they have nothing to guard. They can't guard my hand. And if they try, they lose the opportunity to eat. So now sometimes you have a dog after I go to hand feeding. I'm not going to work for you. I don't know you. I'm not doing jack diddly squat for you, dude. Okay, cool. I'll come back in 6 hours and I'm going to ask you to come. I'm not starving the animal. What I'm doing is I'm changing the requirements for this dog to eat. Now it has to work for me. Now, all dogs want to serve their owners and they want to work for people. So once I tap into that psychology and I teach the dog like, hey, now it's not just because you want to, now it's because you have to and you're not going to eat otherwise. They start to catch on and that barrier starts to break. Even in aggressive dogs, that barrier, that instinct to defend themselves starts to break down because their survival instincts take over. And eventually I have a dog who's more complacent and more ready to serve. Then I can start working with the dog. Depending on the dog, it might need a muzzle just because I need to be safe for myself and other people. Most dogs don't unless it has a bite history. But after we establish the relationship between me and the dog, then I really start working on those 4 fundamental behaviors, which was discipline, exercise, food, and love. We have to really tire out that brain and we have to reteach them that there is another way to behave.
I think this can be enlightening for a lot of people. I mean, I've known Preston for a while now. I think it's been about probably about a year and a half, I think.
Yeah, going on 2 years.
Yeah, going on 2 years. And of course, he's already relayed a lot of this information to us so that we could, put this kind of stuff into our dogs. But I think for a lot of people, this would be very insightful.
I hope so.
Just listening to this podcast, they might be able to change some behaviors in their dogs and not even realize, especially with the feeding thing, that was a big one for us, especially for Zoe. We've taught Zoe to wait.
Nice. That was a big one for you guys.
Yeah, we put her bowl down and we close her cage and we say, wait, and we give her probably about 15 seconds or so, and then we can tell her she can eat.
Nice.
And then we got Clay doing that now too. So
that's so cool.
Yeah, that was a cool one. We could thank my wife for that one because she works really hard with them on that kind of stuff. I'm more of the guy that has to play with them and keep them entertained, but it is what
everyone has their job.
Exactly. So what are some of the most, we've already talked about some of the common mistakes, but what are some of the most common mistakes you see that owners make while trying to manage their reactive dogs?
They push their dog too far, too fast. And that's the human thing to do. And I don't fault anybody for this. We always focus on the thing that's wrong. For instance, the dog jumping up on you. We say, that's wrong. Stop that.
Say no.
Stop doing that.
Yeah.
Get off. Well, what should your dog do? Your dog is displaying a lack of ability to control their motor skills. They're excited and they're trying to do something. They're trying to be happy and express themselves. And they're just being told, no, okay, but what should I do? And that same philosophy applies to a lot of things, not just reactive dogs. To any dog that you feel like you're not training well, and wow, they just won't stop doing this one thing. What should my dog do instead? And when you ask yourself that question, what do I want my dog to do instead? Well, I'd really like my dog to sit. Most people are much happier if their dog can just sit there and wait for the next thing. We have to teach our dog that. And dogs are situational and conditional, which means they can only do something for you in certain situations underneath certain circumstances. So you have to build those. Now, the conditions and the training part of this means just because my dog can sit inside does not mean they can sit when I come in the door and I'm excited to see my dog and I say, I don't expect my dog to sit then unless I teach them that they have to sit then. So then we have to build all these conditions and we have to understand that the human error is expecting too much from my dog. And I have to be able to look at my dog and say, yeah, you know what's going on. But if I look at them and there's a question of do you really know what I'm asking you to do? That's my fault because I wasn't clear with my dog.
So basically replacing the behavior with positive actions.
Positive actions, but things that are fulfilling for your dog. Things that your dog can do. Let's focus on what your dog can do and stop focusing on what your dog is doing wrong.
That's a big statement for a lot of people.
Yeah, it's hard.
It's going to be a big statement for a lot of
That's all that ego stuff I was talking about earlier.
Yeah, because it's just human nature to want them to listen to us.
Yes.
It's human nature for them to want to get their dogs to do what they want because we're the superior being, I guess is what most humans think.
Yeah, I could see that.
Yeah, and I think that's just how our brain is hardwired most of the time.
I think that there's a space for that. I don't think as many people are so the alpha, I'm superior mentality as much any longer. I think there's been a big movement in the last 10 years of people have gotten away from that, but there is definitely a huge chunk of people that still do believe that.
So you're saying that's the outdated behavior, I guess?
It is. Yeah, the alpha behavior is outdated. I still meet people today that believe that. I just think the average person doesn't understand the relationship that you have to have with your dog and that they have their own motivations and they have their own sense of fulfillment and they do have their own agenda. And we see dogs as almost this form who it's just going to do whatever it's going to do. It's just going to be a dog. It's a living creature that wants to do things that it has in its own brain. It has an imagination.
It has a soul.
It has a soul. I truly believe that.
Yeah. There Eventually they understand what you're talking about. I mean, I swear up and down Zoe speaks English.
Well, she understands your tone.
Yeah.
And she understands the consistency behind it. And I believe that dogs are frequency sensitive, and our emotions can be boiled down to frequencies. And when we exert those emotions through like our vocal range and things, it can change. So I believe that they're sensitive to us, and that's why they are our best friend, is because they can pick up on our emotions a little bit better. That's why
I think we pick up on their emotions in the long run too.
Yeah.
We could tell, like, when they're not feeling good and stuff, it makes us feel bad. And it's just, we put a lot of time and love into these furry companions.
Yes.
And it's not a bad thing. I think it's a great thing. Your business offers board and train now, and as well as basic classes. Are there any other options of what owners can expect? I know you do like one-on-one training, correct?
Yeah, I do privates, 30-minute and half-hour sessions and full-hour sessions. I do board and train packages. I'm unlike most boarding train facilities. If you were to go to a boarding train facility in Albuquerque, El Paso, or Lubbock, they would make you sign at least like a 3-week minimum. In some places, you're going to do a 2-week minimum. I don't do that. I just have, if you want to come by and try it for a day just to see what things are about, you can try it for a day. I do offer discount packages for people who buy in bulk. I have group classes available. I try to do them monthly. In the winter, it's a little bit harder. Sometimes I get 2 a month. Sometimes I just do one every other month as people need it in the area.
Group classes are kind of the way to go, if you ask me.
Yeah, group classes are for the average dog. They're very good. I offer walking services as well, and I have a couple fitness clients that I exercise them pretty regularly.
Very awesome, very awesome. And then I know you also do some stuff with the Humane Society too, right?
Yes.
You do, like, if they adopt a dog, they get like a 30-minute session for free, correct?
Yeah, when we're running those promotions, the Humane Society, I've just agreed whenever they need to use that promotion, so many dogs that get adopted between whatever the promotion period is, they get the free 30-minute session with me. That's just to help people with having confidence that if they take a dog home that they have no idea what to do with, they're going to get some advice that's not a charge to them, because I believe that these dogs should stay in the home. And if you walked into a shelter and you said, I love this dog, I'm going to take it home with me, we should do our best to try to keep that animal. And there could just be a small misunderstanding between the human and the dog that can be easily resolved, and we don't want those dogs to go back.
So you have all these different programs and these different classes and everything like that. I guess in the end of things, is it dependent on the dog of what you would suggest for each individual to do?
It can be, but it's also dependent on the human. If we're talking somebody who just literally doesn't have the time to train their dog, then a board and train works very well for them. If you have a lot of time to train your dog, but you don't like the group class setting, privates are a very good way to go. I do recommend everybody take at least one private. That way you can have any of your issues like boiled down to some exacts, because you might have some specific questions that I can't cover in a basics obedience class. But for the vast majority of people, a basics class with 1 or 2 privates a year is more than enough to get your dog into a healthy relationship.
What do you hope that No Dogs Left Behind contributes to the local community and the broader training world?
And I hope that within, I've given myself some goals. My hope is that I'm going to be able to save a lot more dogs. I want to be able to be known as the guy who takes the Humane Society dogs and gets them trained up. I want to be known as when people see me, they know that I am the dog trainer, and they know that if they need help with a dog, they can come to me. That's super important for me, is that people feel like they can approach me and come to me with their dog problems. There's too many dogs that get left, and there's too many dogs that some people just can't deal with. And that's where I come in, is to bridge the relationship between man and dog to help things along and make things easier for everyone involved.
Well, that's an awesome thing to have as a goal, is to save more dogs.
Yeah.
Because I feel like they get forgotten about when it comes to saving them.
It can.
And, I feel like you already are getting the traction of, you're the guy that trains up the dogs at the, given that the TikTok story that you gave me just a little while ago, I feel like you're already starting to become that guy of where people see, oh, he's training these dogs, I should go get that dog because it's going to be, I guess, more trained than the others possibly.
Yeah, that's the cool thing about the social stuff, is people are going to see what the dog's capable of, and they're going to gravitate more towards that dog.
Yeah, and they're going to see the videos and go, oh, that dog's awesome. The dog's awesome. Because you can look at pictures all day.
Right. They look cute, but then there's always that question of, can it do this? And then the little information
what's
that
its behavior?
The dog isn't great.
Yeah, what's its behavior?
Yeah.
Nobody really knows until it's outside of the shelter.
That's very true.
Yeah.
There's usually about a 3-week cool down period for a dog.
It took Clay a while.
Yeah.
So it was still a puppy, so she didn't really it wasn't that big of a deal. She wasn't in a pound, but Clay, it took him a while. How do you see your work making a difference in animals' owners and their families?
I talk a lot about owner responsibility and the impact of how we can create a better dog ourselves. And my impact so far, I know, because a lot of people just kind of look at me and say, well, you're not really a dog trainer. You're more like a person trainer, aren't you? And I say, yes, absolutely, I am. And that's a really good impact to have, as making sure that the people understand that we are just being better people. We're making better dogs, but we're just being better people.
I think at the end of the day, it's trying to make people better for their dogs. I agree with you on that, because the outdated mindset still runs around. Yeah. I know that's what I was taught as a kid, was
compulsion training.
Scream at your dog, tell him no.
Yeah, that's
smash him around.
Compulsion training works in some regards. It's what we have prong collars and choke chains and disciplinary actions, because sometimes our dog does need a consequence.
Yeah.
But primarily, like if we focus on developing dopamine responses in the dog's brain, they're just a happier individual and they're more bonded to us because they associate us with dopamine. And, I have a lot of things in my life I associate with dopamine, and I love every single one of them. Same thing for the dog.
Okay, that's fair. It's to keep them entertained in the long run. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So looking ahead, do you have any exciting new programs or goals that you're working on this year in particular?
So my plans, my expectations for myself this year is to get to the point where my boarding facility always has at least 3 dogs in it. I'd like to be, it could be so busy I have no time for anything else. That's really where I'd like to be. And it's building to the point where I can see the busyness coming. I just want more. And I'd like to get to the point where I'm known as a renowned dog trainer in the state, that where people can come to me from any city and they know that they're going to get a good, well-rounded dog trainer.
That's a great goal. And I know with any business, you got to think of it as a pipe with water, and the water pressure is going to get tighter and tighter and tighter until it blows up.
Yes.
It may not look like it's going to do that now, but 4 or 5 months from now, it could absolutely blow up and you could be busy out of your eyeballs,
Yeah.
So that's great to hear that you want 3 dogs at a time, because that gives you something to do all the time.
Yeah, it does.
Yeah.
And I can sustain 8, but I would like 3.
And are you planning on growing your facility to more than 8 eventually, or?
If I had to, yeah, I would definitely entertain it. But there's also, if I had to have more than 8 dogs, I don't have time for privates.
That's fair.
And I need to have that.
It'd be a lot more boarding than it would be training.
Right. And the boards and board and trains are great, but I lose that human interaction, because if I just have 3 or 4 dogs a day, or even 8 dogs a day that people are just dropping off to me and expect me to get their dogs trained and they'll pick them up in 3 weeks, I've lost the human interaction, and I've lost the part of my business that I love, which is making sure that person who has a really hard dog problem can get help.
Helping them out.
Yeah. Because not everybody can go the board and train route, because it is expensive to leave your dog there for 3 weeks. Maybe they can only do 1 private a week or 1 private every 2 weeks. I still want to work with those people.
I mean, that's completely fair. And it sounds like a pretty rewarding business in the long run.
It is.
Being able to help everybody, whether it's the animal or the person.
Yeah.
And seeing the difference that you're making in people's lives. I'm sure that's the pretty big reward, right?
It is.
If someone's considering reaching out to you, how would they get a hold of you?
You can find me on TikTok, Facebook, or you can find me on my website, which is ndlb.io. There has my email address listed and my phone number.
Okay. And it'll also put his website in the description of this podcast so that people can find it easier, as well to his Facebook page and his TikTok.
I appreciate
so that you guys can go check him out. He does great work. If you could give one piece of advice to every dog owner out there right now, what would it be?
Make it easier for your dog to understand what it is that you want. If they don't get it, you're not making it easy enough.
Thanks for coming on today.
Of course.
I really appreciate it. Thanks for taking the time. I know you're a busy guy too. And again, I'm going to state it. I'm going to keep stating it until he's not doing dog training anymore, which is probably not going to happen. But
yeah, I'm in this to stay.
He turns your wild animals into pets. And I truly mean that. You could come in with the crazy dog, and if you have the patience and you have the time, Preston's the guy. He can help you out.
Thank you. I appreciate that endorsement, sir.
It's no problem. It's no problem at all. And, we'd love to have you on again.
Okay.
Anytime you want to. If you have an event coming up, you have anything special you want
to maybe we can do that, something around like the Humane Society.
Yeah. Or we could even get a member of the Humane Society and we could sit down with both of you.
Okay.
And have a good conversation about, we've already talked about the importance of adopting animals, but we could talk about another subject. And
the importance of keeping your dog after you adopt it.
There's a good one right there. See? So we'll have Preston on again. You can listen to us on Apple Podcast, Spotify, YouTube, iHeartRadio, and you can also listen to us on Amazon Music. So that's your Alexa devices. You can get the app for it as well. And we're currently working on getting as many as we possibly can. So if you know of a podcasting platform that I haven't mentioned, check it. It might be on there. Other than that, thanks for coming on today, and
Thank you for having me.
I hope everybody else has a good rest of the week.
I'm Coyote, and you've been listening to Lincoln County Living, the podcast for the people, by the people. Big thanks to today's guest, Preston Marshall from No Dogs Left Behind, and of course, your host, Nicholas Hall, for guiding us through another great conversation. Don't forget, get this podcast on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, YouTube, iHeartRadio, Amazon Music, and more. Be sure to follow Lincoln County Living on Facebook and your favorite listening platform to stay updated on new episodes, local stories, and all things Lincoln County. If you enjoyed today's episode, please consider leaving a review, sharing it with friends, or dropping a comment to let us know your thoughts. Your support helps keep this podcast going strong. Thanks for tuning in. Until next time, this is Coyote signing off, and I'll see you in the next episode of Lincoln County Living.
From Capitan's dusty trails to Ridoso's peaks so high, Lincoln's ghostly whispers in the moonlit sky, Hondo's rivers running wild through the mighty plains, Carazozo's magic in the desert's open veins.
No God stars so bright in the endless night, Alto's hidden wonders taking flight. Every corner tells a story carved in time. Lincoln County living, we're on the climb.
Lincoln County living, we're roaming free. Every town a treasure, every moment a spree.